Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Another wonderful episode of School of Hard Thoughts podcast. I am Green, and of course...
Welcome to the School of Hard Thoughts. I'm Adrian Davis. So, before we get started, I hate when you guys do that. It's so loud, clapping. Anyway, before we get started, I wanted to get into something really quick. One of my fears as we endeavored on this was that we would just interview a bunch of my friends. And that means we would get a lot of EMS stuff, and we would get a lot of maybe police stuff, and like the first 2 or 3 episodes would be interesting, and then it's like, who the fuck are we going to talk to? Right? But actually, because of one technical difficulty, and just because of the way things have happened in people's lives, we haven't really even talked about EMS shit. So that allowed me to say, okay, we're going to keep bringing people on. But then on top of that, just something sobering happened this week that reminds us that I will have 50 fucking shows about people in EMS and cops and first responders because they deserve it. Because they put their lives on the line every day for peanuts, basically. Barely enough to feed their families. And it happened in Alaska, but it definitely touched some of us locally. I didn't know her, but Margaret Langston Allen, Patrick Coyle was the pilot, and Stacy Ray Morse was the flight nurse on a Guardian flight going to pick up a patient. And it is now still officially missing, I think.
Ooh.
But the search efforts by the Coast Guards were abandoned about 48 hours ago. So we all know what that means. So just to them, to their families, to everyone in the first responder business and all of their families, our hearts go out to you. We're thinking about you, and you are important. So today we're gonna lighten it up a little bit. After all that.
Well, no, I mean it's important to do a moment of silence for some of those folks, which
But it's a podcast, so we're not.
I know, but we did that. We did that with the somber opening. But yes, I think all of us here, and we'll introduce the guest here in a second. But I think everybody at this table has at some point been close to or actually served. Either publicly, in the social sector or for the military. So it is something that we need to remember that these people, like you said, they're there for the greater good. And like you said, Adrian, it's not like they're millionaires doing this. They're not Batman. These are normal, everyday folks that have a big old heart.
Yeah, they're definitely not Batman because I'm Batman.
Right.
Anyway,
silly me.
Today we have Army veteran, Army combat veteran, Army tanker veteran, author, paramedic, freelance computer guru, and one of my friends, Donovan Warren. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I appreciate these.
Again, if you clap, I'll murder you.
Clapping right in your ear. Oh, I have the headphones on, boss. It sounds just fine. It sounds really good.
So we're going to start this as we always started. Who's Donovan?
Well, let's see. I think you covered most of it.
Okay, fine. We'll be signing off.
That's been School of Hard Thoughts.
Former paramedic, former tank crewman, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Saber veteran, and basically just kind of student.
Okay.
Just in general, student of life, student of reality, learner.
Wandering the earth.
Yeah,
Salt of the earth.
Seeker.
Nice.
Yes,
a Rhodes Scholar. What about some of your other endeavors? Okay, so chronologically, how did this go? So you wanted to be an author when you were in high school?
No, it's there's a lot of long story. I mean, I know we're going to be here for a few minutes. But, as a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. When I was, for a long time, I envisioned myself turning into Hawkeye from MASH, trauma surgeon.
Oh yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And my father was in the military. He was a bandmaster in the Army, and so we traveled all over. You know, and was inculcated in that life from the outset. You know, and as time went on, I was suffering from an undiagnosed ADHD, which I was only diagnosed with about 2 years ago, about 18 months ago.
Yep. These things happen.
Yeah, and it's because, by and large, ADHD is often diagnosed a lot earlier and more frequently in people who have the axis of action, people who are on the axis of being hyperactive,
Right.
and a lot less of the people like myself who primarily tend toward the axis of inattentiveness. Those people often are just branded as lazy.
So you're in your head a lot? Is that what it is? Or?
It's interesting that, I mean, if you want to get into the medical, we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So basically what happens is that ADHD, and so there are a few other sort of related brain disorders, they're organic brain disorders, and they're essentially a genetic predisposition toward a lowered density of dopaminergic receptors, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, and more particularly in the executive function system in the prefrontal cortex, which is basically kind of like a receptionist for incoming information. As that incoming information comes in, this receptionist is supposed to sort of prioritize it. Stuff that is filterable gets filtered by the receptionist. And for a person with ADHD, because they have a lower density and a lower sensitivity to dopamine on those receptors, that receptionist, instead of having a 32-line phone bank, actually has a 4-line phone. And they can only handle about 4 things at a time.
Right. Yeah.
And then anything above that just floods into your brain, and so your attention is constantly being shifted around to decide the priority and threat, as it were.
How'd you do it? How'd you do in high school? Did you? I mean,
Very
how were
poor.
your marks?
Oh my! I was like a D and F student.
Let me guess. You did okay on the test, but the homework was BS.
Never did. Yeah, I don't think I turned in homework for like 9-10 years in a row.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm casting a. I'm being a little dangerous. I'm gonna assume you're a little older than me because when Gulf War was happening, I was old enough to watch it on CNN, but I wasn't old enough to serve it.
Then yes.
So, but it's kind of
in fact, I'm just about as old as this guy. Not quite.
So you guys are old enough to be like my really cool older brothers from a different mother.
Fathers.
Exactly. But I think a lot of that went undiagnosed, and a lot of us, because I also have those same tendencies.
Right.
Okay. And I think a lot of it was misdiagnosed because at that point there was no kind of standard baseline to test that. It was kind of an emerging diagnosis, emerging science, mental behavior, mental health in elementary, middle school, and high school people. And I think you're right, a lot of people are getting diagnosed a lot later in life. Do you think that diagnosis is important this late in life?
I think it is, because one of the things that has happened is that as a result of the diagnosis, I have been able to get both treatment options in terms of therapeutic, clinical treatment options. Cognitive behavioral therapy is often used to help people who have ADHD, among other. PTSD is another one that benefits from CBT. That allows you to sort of retool how you envision and how you work with the world around you.
Okay.
But it also...
Let's stop for a second.
Sure.
CBT.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And the other part of that is the medications. Because one of the reasons why ADHD brains suffer from an inattentiveness or a hyperactivity or both is because they have difficulty regulating that receptionist, right? And if that receptionist has all the dopamine that they need, their bank of phones gets wider, and the methylphenidate or the Ritalin or whatever the other medications are that you take. I take methylphenidate and guanfacine together as kind of a combination, and those medications create an increase in the circulating dopamine that is in that part of the brain, which makes that part of the brain work better. And so the people who have ADHD, whether it's a hyperactivity or an inattentive style, their benefit from the medication makes the therapy stick. Because now not only do you have the tools to deal with how to create new habits, how to do all the things that normal, I say normal, but neurotypical brains do, you can do those things much more effectively, and you can learn how to deal with the times when the medication wears off, or you can deal with the new information that sometimes can flummox people that have ADHD.
So let's talk about what happened to you socially. So you have this undiagnosed condition. You're not doing very well in school.
Right.
So you decided to join the army.
Among other things. Yeah, I mean,
That's a Ben Folds song. That's
Right?
literally a Ben Folds song right there.
Yeah, so what I did was when I was in high school, I think there was actually a sort of a more malevolent chain of events that went to that.
Ooh, malevolence.
Yeah, I had started to one of the problems with undiagnosed ADHD is often self-medication. I self-medicated with a combination of things, but mostly with alcohol.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in our generation, alcohol is what was available.
Got no idea what you're talking about.
Right. and so as a teenager, it was difficult. I had a few friends, but most of us were friends because we drank together.
Right.
Right.
As teenagers, right?
That's where the term drinking buddies comes from.
Oh yeah. So I got into a crowd of friends that were in that part of the where I was living at the time, and it was in Sierra Vista, just off Fort Huachuca, which was where my dad was stationed, and we would go drinking and we did hoodlum stuff, and it got to the point where it seemed to be escalating, and I got in trouble with the cops a couple times, and I was like, okay, well, this isn't going right. So I sat down and I thought to myself I was going to go enlist in the Marine Corps, and I said, okay, well, I went up to the Marine recruiter and talked to them, and I had great GT scores. I mean, my ASVAB scores were just off the charts. And they said, yeah, come back when you graduate from high school. Because that's, I don't think they even take them. At the time, they wouldn't take them.
I took my ASVAB, I think, my junior year.
Mine was my junior year as well. Yeah, junior year.
Yep.
And I got pretty high scores, and it seems like I kind of very much understand where you're coming from. I grew up in Benson, which is just down Highway 90 from you, and it was much the same case. There was no. Well, actually, as I was exiting high school, ADD and some of these medications were just becoming the base. The baseline. It was becoming the standard what to do, but it was also giving certain people too much access to the wrong kinds of medication. There was a lot of misdiagnosis happening at that time.
Sure.
But so what happened? Did you graduate and join the Marines? And
No. No. What happened was I knew that if I took his advice and went back to high school, it was going to get worse. I was going to continue to progress down this path of hoodlumism, and
Just out of curiosity, if you want to talk about it, what kind of shit were you doing?
Oh, we were breaking into people's houses. We were. I don't recall that we ever actually did anything other than like break into a couple of garages.
property damage.
I'm about to say property crimes because it's so. And I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble for this, but it's from my experience and just from the numbers I've seen, it tends that young white men, when they get in trouble, they destroy things. It's property crimes.
Right. Okay.
Young black men kill each other.
Okay.
Wow.
So
More of a violent crime.
it's one of those things that I grew up in a horrible neighborhood, and couldn't get involved with that stuff because I'm about that big, and couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag, even though I wrestled in high school. So, but
You would have been the driver.
yeah, right. Too young to drive, and So, and always kind of had a law and order perspective anyway, and also didn't have any at that point yet. I have PTSD now, but I didn't. I was lucky enough to have a pretty straightforward genetic picture. But I saw that around me, so that was the reason I joined the military. Was because I was like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. So
That was exactly the same experience that I had. Was in terms of I need to get out. I'm going down this pathway. I can't do this anymore. And I knew if I went back to high school, I would. And that wasn't going to work.
I got you.
That wasn't going to work out. So what I did then was I decided, okay, well, I can't get into the Corps. So I walked across the hall to the Army recruiter and talked to him about it. And he saw my GT scores on the ASVAB and started out. The drool started to drip out of the corner of his head.
Yeah.
And so eventually I enlisted. And I actually didn't, at the time, I didn't have I had a choice of duty station, choice of MOS guarantee in my contract.
I did too, and they violated it. But go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't violate mine. I don't know what that is. But so I was in there, but I was 16. And it was at the end of the fall semester of '86. So I was not quite 17 yet. But I went back and I talked to my parents, and I had actually been arrested shoplifting from a store down in Sierra Vista, and in exchange for the store not pressing charges, my parents agreed to sign for me to join the Army.
Ah, there you go.
And so, like the Monday after I turned 17, we went into the recruiter's office. And
Yeah, just so one Army guy to another. You were in '86 was when your basic was?
Basic was in '87.
Okay, so you got
March of
lucky
87.
because my basic was in '85, and it was the last year they could hit you.
Oh, wow.
You went into an army where they weren't allowed to hit you.
So you got hit?
Except for under extreme circumstances. I got hit once.
Yeah.
But that's my story. We're talking about Donovan. I got hit because I was an idiot. But
Well, these things happen.
That does occasionally come up.
A lot of us get hit when we're idiots.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not just reserved for the military.
Sure.
no, but at least in the military up until 1985, they could do it under color of authority.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Right.
And they got paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
It's like MMA.
Only less publicized and less loved. So, you're 17. You were a miscreant. You were just lighting Fry Boulevard on fire.
Oh yeah.
I get you.
Oh yeah.
Was the store you stole from Hastings?
No.
That CD store that was in. Okay.
We were stealing alcohol.
Oh, cool.
It was vodka.
You know, these
a couple of
things-
days earlier, one of my drinking buddies had stolen literally a gallon bottle of vodka out of the store, shoplifting. And so we went to try again, and I got caught. So
Of course.
You went again to the
Yes.
same. They always return to the scene of the crime.
They do.
Oh my goodness. So how did that go from 17? Let's go. Let's flash forward past basic, past the normal, stuff. When did you actually start having some fun and deciding that, like, hey, this is. Well, when I say fun, I mean.
No, you can say
It
fun.
is.
You know what I
say
mean.
Fun. You can absolutely
it's
say fun.
it's
It's
fun
something
be on
to
tanks.
do.
That's-
It's something to do. So,
Yeah, so there, your MOS guarantee afforded you that, so you picked tanks.
Yep. Well, they wanted me to do something with. They had some kind of a nuclear job.
Oh wow.
And it had nothing to do with nuclear. It was power. Some kind
Right,
of,
right.
because in the Navy, of course, you have these guys that are on, nuke vessels.
Yeah, we just talked to some Navy guy.
Some Navy guy. But so
I
they
think that was
have,
Aaron.
Yeah.
so obviously they have nuke engineers, and that makes sense. But I
Bad
had no
tasting
idea
movies, too.
that apparently the Army has similar kind of
Right.
MOS.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, no, I wanted to go in as a medic because I was still thinking about that track
Being a
of
doctor,
yeah. So I actually went up there to MEPS up in Phoenix with the idea that I would go, sign in as a medic. But I had when they told me that when I would go into delayed entry program. There's an acronym for it. There's an acronym for everything.
Of course.
So delayed entry. What the delayed entry was going to put me back into like September of '87 to start basic, and I would have to go back to school. And I knew that was not
Didn't want to go back to school.
a good option because I would just
School was not
wind
for you.
up with the
It
same
sounds
people.
like federal public school just was not your venue, and that you got through 15 years somehow.
somehow. So I was like, okay, well, what else you got? Because I can't wait till September.
Right.
You know, so we ended up watching a couple of other ones, and they showed me the 19 Delta, which is Cavalry Scout video, and they had just started putting the Bradleys online, and they showed the video of the Bradley doing all this cool stuff. And you look at the Bradley, and it's 11,000 feet tall, and everything else on the battlefield is like 7 feet tall.
Yeah. That's a
And
target.
and you want me to go be stealthy and scout around in this, and it's only got a 25mm pew pew? No thank you. That's not going to cut it. So show me what else you
incognito
got.
dreadnought. Good lord.
Oh,
So what did you finally
anyway,
pick?
so I finally picked 19 kilo. So they showed the tank video of the M1 tank rolling around, and I was like, yeah, that's what I wanted.
M1A1 Abrams.
So I went to basic for, I went to one station unit training, which is, it's not basic, because most people in the Army go to basic, you take a short break, you go to AIT for your
Right.
MLS school. And in infantry armor, artillery, military police, combat engineers, and air defense artillery, I think, and there may be one or two others. They do what's called one station unit training, where all the people that are all going to be 19 kilos, 19 Delta, which is Cav Scout, 13, I think Foxtrot is one of the artillery ones, but they all go to a, MOS school that is all one. You go through like 4 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks of basic training, and then you immediately transition into MLS school, and there's no break, and you just go through. We did 14 weeks plus a 0 week, so 15 weeks total.
So how many people are? You say tank crew?
Yeah.
What's the number for because a lot of our listeners are veterans or have close proximity to such. How many people are you cramming into that box?
An M1 tank holds, and actually every U.S. Army tank since the, I think, M46, which is the M47, M48, M60, and M1 tanks are all 4-man crews. Mm-hmm. And you have a gunner, a driver, a loader, and a tank commander. And there's 4 people in the tank.
Gotcha.
So what's the breakdown of that? Is it 3 enlisted and an officer, or?
No, it depends on which tank it is. There's a tank platoon is kind of the smallest unit that we think about in tanks most of the time, and there are 4 tanks per tank platoon.
Okay.
And tank platoon, infantry platoon, same kind of level of organization. In a tank platoon, there you've got 4 tanks, 4 people each. Of those tanks, one of them is the platoon leader, and he's usually second lieutenant,
Right.
which is the 01.
Butterbar.
Butterbar, yeah.
Yeah.
The initial entry, I just barely graduated college, just barely graduated from armor officer basic, and now I'm in charge of all of these people.
High-powered weapons.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes. It actually works out pretty well. I mean, the Army's all volunteer force now really does produce some outstanding officers. The other 3 tanks are all. Everybody else in the platoon is enlisted. And the 3 tank platoon, the other 3 tanks, one of them is the platoon sergeant, who's the most senior of the NCOs, and the other 2 are usually staff sergeant E6, which is the 6th level of enlisted personnel. And everybody else basically is either sergeant or less. About half of them are E1 through E4, which are the non-NCO enlisted person. And so for every tank platoon, you have 1 officer and 15 soldiers.
Wow.
About 7 of which are NCOs, 8 of which are enlisted.
Right, but there's probably a sergeant first class somewhere that's running basically the whole thing.
Most of the time, and that's, any smart lieutenant will do that. Will let the sergeant first class do most of the day-to-day grinding work because he has more experience. He has more experience on tanks. He has more experience in leadership. He has more experience with personnel. And he has a lot more experience in how the Army works.
Put the aces in their places,
Absolutely.
I mean, you're there to win.
Yeah. And that actually came up during Desert Storm. It was one of those. We had several situations during the ground.
Now let's get into that. Let's do a little bit of fast forward and talk about. So when did you put your shoe leather on the foreign soil?
We landed in the, I think it was in King Khalid Military City on the 1st of October of 1990, and it was about 11 o'clock at night when we got there. We were literally piling off the plane, throwing our duffel bags and all our other equipment into the back of Deuce and Halfs, and stood in formation. It was about 11:30,
Yeah.
23:30 local time, and and the first thing that happened was our platoon sergeant walked around and literally handed us a 1 liter bottle of Saudi Arabian bottled water and said, "Drink this now." And we each and every one of us.
And why
drank
is
an
that?
entire liter of
Why?
water.
Why?
Because this desert here actually gets about 12 inches of rain a year.
Right.
And I'm used to that. I lived here in Tucson. We were in El Paso, which is a very similar desert.
As deserts go, it's very verdant.
It really is.
It's not like, okay, so I'm okay.
Yeah, and that desert there gets less than an inch of rain. Less than 10% of the annual rainfall. And it's wow.
So that's a dry heat for sure.
That is, yes.
The atmosphere is consistently just sucking moisture out of every
Actually,
part of you.
in my memoirs of Desert Storm, with the in it book that I wrote, I wrote in there that stepping off the plane in King Khalid Military City or wherever it was we landed, I don't know, I don't actually remember for sure. It felt like what it must have felt like for a Fremen to walk into the desert on Arrakis without a spacesuit. That dry, you know what I mean? Where it literally sucks the moisture out of your ears, your eyes start to dry out, your mouth gets completely dry.
Sounds like you're in the opening scene of Dune.
Yes.
Like the spice must flow.
Yes.
You're looking for.
Our eyes don't have the blue on blue yet. It's just white on blue.
They're remaking that. Too.
That's coming.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And how long were you over there before you had any kind of reprieve from that? Like, what was your longest?
Oh, we had no
stint?
reprieve.
No,
we were
none
there
at
the
all.
whole time. It was five. We were in country 5 months, 27 days, and which was exactly 3 days short of being able to put another numeral on the overseas service.
Darn
Just
it.
FYI.
Right, because
Those pins cost money. They
There are
do.
people who were younger who may not remember this, but remind our audience how not only successful but brief, quick, and pretty complete that campaign was.
Oh yeah, it's. I would hesitate to disparage too much the enemy that we fought, because all combat against all enemies is always terrifying and is always difficult.
No, we're not making
Having
light
said
of it.
that, having said that, it was definitely from a planning perspective. I mean, it's probably in my estimation, it is the most complete, top to bottom, beginning to end, well planned and executed military campaign, maybe in the entire history of the U.S. military.
Wow.
And a lot of that was the result of a couple of political decisions. One was from the White House to let the Chief of Staff, Colin Powell, and the CENTCOM, Central Command, General Schwarzkopf, to let
Storm and
them
Norman
run the war and execute it as a military operation rather than as a political operation. When they did that, soldiers planned the war. And when the soldiers plan the war, they do a better job than when politicians plan the war.
Amen. My God.
Right. So having that with a guy like Colin Powell, who had been, I believe he was an infantry officer in Vietnam, as was Schwarzkopf. And many of our other leaders had been, if not company level commanders or platoon leaders in Vietnam, took leadership directly from people who had been there. So at best, one step behind.
Right, and they had the experience of coming into this is a clusterfuck. When I'm in charge, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of when I have a kid, I'm not going to treat him the way my dad treated me, kind of thing. Similar sort of but that's exactly what happened. Was they let the military planners plan the military operations. They gave them the support from a political standpoint that they could, and and said here. Now they approved it. They still wanted to be in the loop and kept informed, but as long as it didn't seem completely out of the ordinary, they agreed to it. They would let it continue to go. Part of that too is Bush was the president, at the time.
Bush Senior.
He had been in the military.
He'd also been director of CIA.
And CIA director, so he was much more deeply steeped in understanding and being able to sort of intellectually understand. Even
He
if
understood the mechanics behind it all.
Exactly.
He's
and
been
he
there.
he could hear good plans from bad plans, and was a little better able.
Yeah, and
than maybe
that's
some.
kind of like your ideal situation, because you have a guy who politically and through his career path was kind of a big picture guy, but he also understood the workings below him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I need to let those guys run this thing, and then when it comes to big picture stuff, like the decision not to continue to go into Iraq and take it over, he made those decisions, and I think we benefited from it, but then his son came along, so.
Well,
Right.
and what are you saying?
Well, I mean,
mission freaking accomplished.
19
Adrian.
hijackers had something to do with that too.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true. That's true.
So you're 17, you go into the army, you decide that you're going to be a tanker. You go to basic. Like you said, you the one force training, and you finish that, and things are going along, and the next thing you know, you're in the middle of a war. What's that about?
Well, it's in a little bit in a little bit of a way, it is be careful what you wish for, because before that happened, there was this little activity that happened in Central America with
Oh, yeah.
Noriega.
Oh, Manuel
Operation Just
Noriega.
Cause, right?
Yeah.
I was in El Paso with 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment at the time, and it's the same unit I deployed for Desert Shield. So we were in El Paso. We got a briefing like 3 days before the actual invasion kicked off. They called the whole regiment in. We all sat in this big movie theater, and the colonel of the regiment came out and said, "Hey, this is what's going on. There's probably going to be an invasion in Panama. We're not going first, but if they need follow-on forces, we do have some contingency plans to deploy 3rd ACR down into Panama." We didn't go, right? They didn't need us. 82nd went, 101st went, I think it was
First went.
170. I don't actually.
I know 82nd
173rd may
went.
not have gone, but I think they sent the 190. I don't remember. Anyway, so there were a couple of these Army paratrooper divisions that went in. I think it was 7th Infantry Division might have gone in. But there were a few units, and there were, of course, Rangers and SEALs and Special Forces, and they had special operations that were going on. And they didn't need us. But the whole time we're sitting in this theater, we're thinking to ourselves, man, we're going to get to take our M1A1 tanks and some shit up.
You were kind of chomping at the bit when it came.
'Cause-
You're ready to use your training.
No combat soldier, no combat armed soldier really wants to kill people, right? But what combat armed soldiers do for a living, they're really the only MOSs in any of the military services that don't get to do their job every day. A signal intelligence or a signal person
You get
is
to
string
train
and
for
wire.
it. You get to pretend that you don't.
Exactly.
you
Supply
don't get-
people, they're having to coordinate stuff, and they're having to
Right.
request stuff.
Supply is supply. You still need to get BDUs to Leonard Wood.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. But infantry soldiers don't get to go fight every day.
No.
Occasionally, you get to pretend. You get to go to the NTC, or you get to go to the JRTC, or any of these other places where you can dig a hole in the ground and get rained on and then go home. But you don't get to actually be an infantry. You don't get to be a tanker. You get to do some of the tanking stuff. You get to drive around, you get to shoot the big main gun at plywood targets.
Right.
But you never get
And
to
nothing
be a
shooting
tanker.
back.
Right, exactly. And that's so in the combat arms, we did have this kind of, like you said, chomping at the bit, just itching, waiting, and it never came down. So
And
we
part
were-
of that is training, and part of it is rather Pavlovian conditioning.
Sure, no doubt.
And they have to do that. It's one of the things that I've always struggled with after my service, and then becoming a police officer. It's like looking at guys that were combat veterans, and I'm just like, I'm not sure this guy should be a cop.
Right.
So it's because you get so
Is there like a disassociation there, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, Donovan saw combat and I didn't, so he'd be a better person to talk about it. But I do know that, you know, by the third week of basic training, you're ready to kill something. You know, you really are.
They're transforming you mentally to
Yes.
prepare yourself to do that.
And you have to, because the taking of a human life, which is something I do know about, is just, it's unfathomable to if anyone with a normal psyche, it's very, very foreign. It's not, you know, it might be in our base,
In the
genetic
reptilian
code,
brainstem area,
right.
yeah.
It might be there.
The fight or flight kind of
But
circumstances.
the evolved society that we lived in, you know, for generations, killing someone, or even killing something that you're not going to eat, you know, is devastating to your psyche.
And sometimes when you are going to eat the elk or the deer, it still sucks.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and I to that point, I think that I think it was Joan Baez that once asked if killing is natural, then why did men have to go to training to learn how to do it? And the answer is because killing is natural. It's dealing with the consequences of killing afterwards. Number one, which we still don't do a very good job of, and number two, not running. Fear of what happens during fighting is a big, huge part of what is
your natural
overcome.
instinct. Your natural instinct. There's danger. There's a loud noise. You know, from the
React.
time you're little, it's run. You don't run towards it. You run away from it.
Right.
And so running towards versus running away, it kind of is a running theme in your life. So how many tours did you do?
Oh, just one.
One tour.
That was the only.
So you did one tour and then you came home and started robbing liquor stores again.
No, I had.
I thought he looked familiar. I was his wheelman.
Snitches get
Nice.
stitches.
Oh, I was running the store.
Right.
So
Sorry-
yeah,
sorry
we did.
about that.
That's okay. It's not my
The
money.
insurance probably covered it.
Exactly, it's not my money. So yeah, I mean, Ace brings up a good point. You get done, and you're mentally and physically conditioned to be carrying out these objectives, and hitting these benchmarks and stuff like this. So what'd you do? You came back and just slid right back into civilian life without a problem?
No. While I was in, I had changed my focus academically. I had decided that what I was going to want to try to do was to go get a degree and become a historian, do history work of some kind. I wasn't sure yet. I didn't have coalescing all of these thoughts together. And so when we came back, it was a very jarring.
Like culture shock?
Yeah, because it was different. I had gone to Korea with my family. My father was stationed in Seoul, and we all went in the mid '80s. And I went to Germany. Right, I had gone to Germany as my first rotation. And coming back from Korea was tough because there was no internet and we had no idea. We missed Cabbage Patch Dolls. We missed. I missed several really awesome albums. Like I don't remember seeing. I had Defenders of the Faith and Screaming for Vengeance. I had those albums, but there were some of the other albums, especially like I don't think they sold Metallica's. Ride the Lightning.
Oh, that's their superior album.
PX.
That's a very good album.
Yeah, so I didn't know that album even existed until I got back to the States. So we missed a big chunk. But it was way worse. I mean, that was 2 years, but this almost 6 months was way worse. I mean, partly because not only were we separated, because, again, no internet, obviously no YouTube, no nothing. We didn't have any internet stuff. But we were delayed because everything we had to communicate with our families was at least a week. So I would get newspaper clippings. Oh, sure. And I would get newspaper clippings from my family about, I think I still have it at home, the game where Arizona and Oregon, where, I can't remember his name of the safety, came up and he clobbered the Oregon quarterback right at the goal line so he couldn't score. And Wildcats ended up beating Oregon in Arizona Stadium. But that was like almost a month. after that I got this newspaper clipping about that.
Right, yeah, we definitely communicated by letters.
Oh yeah, letters. And the other thing that was actually really cool was we had cassette tapes.
Oh yeah,
And we would record cassette tapes.
Oh yeah,
to each
mixtapes.
other.
that was your voice texting. You know, that was your cell phone at the time. It's just like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what Ma or Aunt, whoever is up to. This is what's going on in your hometown.
Yeah.
What's up?
It was awesome to get that cassette, get in your tank, and you're not on guard duty. You huddle up with your earphones. But again, delayed, so there was this huge, massive amount of information we missed. They put out a video. There was the Voices That Care video that was put out by Linda Jenner. It's not that Jenner, but Linda's.
There is more than one Jenner.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a pretty common name.
But and the songwriter that wrote with Peter Cetera and Chicago, they had done this video and this song, Voices That Care, that was supposed to celebrate remind all the guys in the personnel in the Gulf that, hey, we're thinking about you. We want you to come home safely. We didn't know that existed until the flight home.
Wow.
And we watched it on the flight home from King College Military.
Wow.
So that's another thing too. Desert Shield Storm. That is about the first time where we see a flip in public opinion about the military. And so, what was it like coming home?
Oh, the coming home was amazing. We had our first actual landing in the States. We had a layover in LaGuardia. I have a great story about that. We landed in LaGuardia, and our troop commander, or our squadron commander, there were two things that happened. One of the soldiers on the plane was from New York, and his wife met us with a crowd of like 30 or 40 people.
Awesome.
And they all had signs, and they were cheering and screaming at us, and it was awesome. And the CO basically gave him like a 3-day pass, and he stayed in New York. So we came off the plane, he met his wife, they hugged, and they were awesome. And then he had 3 days to report back to the place afterwards, But the other thing that happened there was we were on the plane, we were getting ready to land. Our squadron CO came up on the radio and said, hey, or came up on the intercom and said, hey guys, so when we landed in LaGuardia, you can have 2 beers each. No more.
Wow.
And nothing but beer, but you can have 2. And so we landed in LaGuardia, and there were 700, maybe not quite that many, soldiers who hadn't had a drop of alcohol in almost 6 months.
Wow.
Scouring LaGuardia on a Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning looking for beer, and there were no facilities open. But one of the vendors of one of the other stores knew a beer cart guy and called him at home.
Wow.
And said, you've got a flight of soldiers from Desert Storm that are in the airport looking for beer. You should come open up, and he did.
That's awesome.
And so the CO came over when they opened it up. He came over and said, 2 beers each, that's it. Don't sell them any more than that. And they did. They sold beer after beer after beer.
I bet.
That's a great
That's
story.
a quick 1,400 beers right
right.
there. Lord of mercy.
And 3 or 4, maybe $5 a pop.
Yeah.
That dude made money on a Sunday like probably he never made this.
No kidding.
So you come back, you get in the civilian world, and of course you just go to your local tank dealership and become a tank salesman.
Right.
Of course. No.
Slaps the top of this roof.
Yeah,
This
tanks are
thing-
one
this
of those weapon
fits
systems
so many.
that are definitely on the no-buy list.
I thought Master P had a tank. It must have been a decommission.
There are some demilled
Yeah,
older
exactly.
tanks that you can, but they're mostly like the M4 Sherman and stuff from World War II. And
Yeah.
it's a little later.
Status symbols.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, there was a guy on the news, I guess, a lawyer somewhere in the States that had
Figured to be a fucking lawyer.
Yeah.
in violation of the HOA rules, but they're actually anyway. So that's so no, I didn't do that. I came back to Tucson, so my family was living here, but we got back from we arrived back in the States on the 18th of March of '91 from Saudi. Literally flew in there to here, and then did make some stuff, but got in, landed, and then had I think it was a Sunday, and so I think they gave us like one day to reunite with family and friends and have a good time, have a good meal, decompress a little bit, and then come back because we were going to have to take our tanks to the wash rack, take our ammunition, take our weapons out, get them clean, do the accounting and all that kind of stuff. And we did all that stuff. Took about 10 days, and then we had 30-day leave, and I went to California to meet up with a friend of my family's that had been writing letters. So I flew out to Canyon Country, which is in LA, and hung out there for a few days, and then went to Florida with my buddy Rob, who had been my barracks roommate. And so he was there, his family was there. Went out to Boca Raton, hung with them for a few days, and then came back home and got my clearing papers. And 10 days after that, I wasn't a civilian. I took terminal leave, but that was it.
You were done with your military experience.
Finished with it. 10 days later, at home, 45 days of terminal leave, plus a paycheck for the other 48 or 9 days that I had of leave saved up, and absolutely no idea where I was going to go. So I hadn't taken my SATs yet because I had taken my ASVAB.
Right.
But I was a junior in high school when that happened, and then I enlisted, and so I just never got around to it. Took the SAT, did really well, and then applied at the U of A to go to college, and said, okay, I'll go back. We'll go to the history route and start pursuing that.
So somewhere in there you had to get a GED, right?
I did. I actually got it while I was in
Where you're in the Army.
Yeah, it was just after I got back to Fort Bliss. I decided.
That's the one thing about the military. I mean, there's a lot of good things about the military, but the one thing about the military that has always existed, but it's really up to you as an individual soldier, sailor, Marine, to do the research. But there's a plethora of resources. So it's like if you need your GED, you can get your GED. If you you can still do it. I'm not sure how much longer you're going to be able to do it, but you can still become a associate degree RN, actually a certified RN, basically through correspondence course. Mm-hmm. And all of those courses in the military are free.
Yep.
The tests are free.
Yep.
You got to do the courses on your own, but the tests are free, and it's really about testing out. So all of that stuff is available, and if you know about it and take advantage of it, it's almost better than the meager salary that they pay.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but there's not just the Army, but all the military services. The Air Force has the community college of the Air Force. The Navy and the Marine Corps have their own options, both on ship and on shore. You can do correspondence or even community classes, remote classes. It's probably easier for the Navy and Marine Corps because you can always, they've always got digital, signal uplink to
They've got good Wi-Fi.
It's all geosynchronous Wi-Fi.
So it can be a little more difficult to do some of that stuff if you're deployed. Like while we were in Saudi, we would probably not have had any of those opportunities to get the educational stuff done. But when we were in fact, when I was at Fort Bliss, I took my GED. I took a community college course through that was done on base. It was done through the El Paso, whatever the Texas Community College is there in that county. But
so what do you do? It sounds like that you had so many varied interests. How did you decide to zero in on a curriculum, or did you, or have you? Have you ever settled in on a specific venue of expertise, or are you like a Renaissance man? A little bit of expertise in
definitely
all
a little
venues.
bit of rock and roll, a little bit of country, right?
Okay.
When I started college, I was thinking history. Going to go because my aunt, my dad's sister, was a historian. She was a PhD historian, and at the time, I think she was off doing stuff around the country, but was working but eventually got a job teaching history at Arizona State University. And so I was thinking, okay, if nothing else, I can always sort of follow in that role and go that way. Because history is something that I am definitely fascinated with. Understanding where we were reflects where we are.
Oh, yeah.
And where we're going to go.
Yeah, because we repeat that shit.
Absolutely. The Satayana, those who forget history, are doomed to repeat it. So I did that, and the first semester I was
Satayana, freaking Gilgamesh.
Right.
Anyhow.
But yeah, so I ended up ended up just sort of taking the basic initial courses. But I enrolled in one of the classes I enrolled in was philosophy 101 at the U. And we studied 3 books. We studied the Republic of Plato, of course. We did René Descartes' the Cogito ergo sum, not the other one. Meditations on First Philosophy. And then we did 3 dialogues between Hilaeus and Philonous. We did those 3, and I was hooked on philosophy. And so I said, okay, I'll change my major. And I changed my major to philosophy and decided to take a minor in communications. And then went to communications class the next semester, my first spring semester, freshman year. And from the very first page of the book, it was clear that communications as a field had very little scientific underpinning to it yet.
Right.
It was all a bunch of gobbledygook.
Oh yeah.
So I dropped
aesthetics class and
changed. Changed my major, and so what I did then was I actually ended up double majoring in philosophy and political science. So I kind of kept on that track as I was.
Is that a good combo?
It can be.
Sounds like a 1-2 punch for any talking head pundit nowadays. Would have to do that as a prereq.
Oh, you would think so, right?
Yeah, you would
Communications for
sincerely
journalism
hope
is
so.
more- Yeah, because a lot of that stuff they actually don't want knowledgeable people talking head.
No.
What they really want are people who are good at communicating.
Well, they want reactions. They
Yes.
want reactionary people.
Yes.
Like some of our wonderful staff around here. Yeah. And then, so poli-sci and philosophy.
Yes.
So when are you running for office?
Never.
And what office do you want to run
because
for?
he's too educated to actually do it.
No interest.
Well, that's like that question. Why don't the smartest people in the world run for president? I'm like, your answer lies within your question.
Yes. Yes.
So, but have you ever been tempted to work for a campaign or go out and,
To be honest, I did. That was actually my original. When I was thinking about that communications, I was thinking about doing like campaign management. Running into, of course you remember West Wing. Josh,
Oh yeah, I was just
God.
about to say
Josh
you're
character.
exactly.
I love Aaron
Of course,
Sorkin.
You're going to be
Yeah.
Josh Lyman.
Yeah.
Sorkin is awesome.
Of course, this was before that show came on the air, but that's the guy I was looking toward. That his focus, I wanted to be him.
And you can do it really easy nowadays. You just keep your iPhone in front of you. You can get a lot of those walking hallway shots just on your own. You don't even need a crew anymore. I think this is. I think this is very interesting because I think more people do need to get into poli-sci and philosophy. They need to get a little bit more cerebral, and I think there's a lot of backlash to that kind of what I consider free thinking these days, because everything these days appears to be so polarized that you're not allowed to draw from anything but one well.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And one of the things I think that has happened is that with the advent of a considerable technology, I've got the iPhone here. With this iPhone, I don't have to remember anything. I don't actually have to learn,
Right.
because I can look up information. The problem there is now because I don't have enough, maybe I say I, as a general sort of a generic
Of course.
person, I may not have the knowledge base necessary to correctly and properly evaluate the veracity of the sources of the information that I'm
Exactly.
accessing
Right. People
and
don't do
their
that. They just
inherent leaning.
They
And
just
so
go
that
for the
can become
clickbait
very- yeah.
and
Well, and that brings up a question: are we leaning more into mob rule then? If
I don't
these
know that
little
human history has ever been not mob rule.
good answer, and that's what we were looking for. Let's see if it's on the board.
I think there is for every movement there's a counter movement. For every action there is an equal or opposite reaction, and I think one of the
Right.
I think one of the counters to that is these long form conversations where you get to get everything out and in context.
Right.
You get to explore an entire subject And there's so much of that out there, and most of it is, I'm going to put this in air quotes, but most of it is free
Right.
and accessible. And how often, other than reading a book that you were assigned, how often did you have in our age, when we were growing up, access to the intellectuals of the time? We didn't.
Right.
But now you do.
Sure.
You want to hear what Sam Harris has to say about things? You dial that up. You want to hear about what Richard Dawkins has to say about things? You dial that up. Whatever you want to. Yeah.
If you're interested in, if you're all interested in physics, Dr. Keiko or Neil deGrasse Tyson are people who you can. They go to the YouTube channel and you can listen to a PhD expert in cosmology or PhD
Right,
expert
and you may
in-
end up interacting with them.
Well, and DeGrasse Tyson actually provides all of his lectures for free. Like, you can actually sit and absorb his knowledge. That people who strangle each other for scholarships to get to his curriculum.
Right.
He's just like, you know what? No, this should be common knowledge. He does work with that. But are we cultivating a society that wants to do that? Are we living in a soundbite kind of phase right now? I don't know. You guys email us, email Donovan, email Ace, and let us know what you think about that. So what led you from poli-sci philosophy to EMS?
Well, I
and is that a good fit? Is that a good fit?
those two in particular, there's no real direct correlation.
Yeah,
That-
exactly.
The way that I can, so in my particular case, I had discovered computers and the internet relay chat.
MIRC.
Yeah,
Oh
and
man.
when I discovered the internet relay chat, my grades went from mediocre, 2.8 to 1 point something. And
Because you were spending all your time.
I knew
on
you sounded
message boards.
familiar.
Yeah.
I knew I've talked with you on a green black screen.
Oh yes, all those terminal labs.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, the amber on slightly darker amber. Down in Apache Santa Cruz dorm, there was
Oh,
a
man.
terminal lab downstairs in the dorm that I was living in. And so my grades plummeted, and I failed to make satisfactory academic progress for my federal student aid, and I couldn't go back to school. So I had to go get a job. I went out, got a job working in a local school district as a computer tech, and then as a network tech for the district, and then started working as a contractor over at IBM for a while.
So I'm going to have to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Because where did you pick up the computer science?
It's interesting. That's just something that I have kind of, it just comes naturally.
So I
to
always
me.
had a knack for.
We had been, we had the Atari 2600 at the house.
Oh, okay, that's where we. Okay, cool.
Right, and played games.
And then he saw War Games with Matthew Broderick.
I did see War Games with Matthew Broderick. We were in Korea, so we saw it a year and a half late. But we did.
Was it in a
came out
theater?
in '83, yeah. We saw
Oh,
it in a
you
theater on
lucky
base.
son of a gun!
Yeah.
I'd love to see that on the big screen.
But then when I was in the Army, there's actually some computerization of the tanks. There have been far more computerized now. The M1A2 tank is a very modern, computer-based system. But they've used ballistic computers to calculate aim point and landing point, super elevation and tracking, all that kind of stuff for a long, long time. But there was some exposure there. But I had friends that had Commodore 64s and Apple II GSs when I was in high school. And then after I got out, my dad had bought himself a Mac Plus with the upgrade board. So we had the
That was a chunk of
20
change
megabyte
back in
hard
the day,
drive.
man.
Yeah, in fact, I still have the original receipt files. It was in his papers,
Wow.
when he passed.
Yeah.
So I got all that. Yeah, it was like $5,000.
That was the price of a car back
And
then.
probably didn't have the computing power of the first iPhone.
Oh no! I think you could outperform. I think you could probably outperform a supercomputer bank of Mac Plus computers with the original iPhone.
But
You could probably do that with the original iPhone.
It's funny where you end up
Shuffle.
ends up. That seems to be a running theme on this podcast. That Navy guy, we're not going to mention his fucking name. Yeah, that guy.
Fucked up.
But
This guy's got a memory. You got my replacement right here when I'm on vacation. God damn.
When that guy decided to leave his career as a firefighter paramedic, he just decided that he was going to make tables, and same kind of question. Like, well, wait a minute, whoa, where did you get that? Where did you get the carpentry
exactly.
skills? He's like, I already fucking had them. I'm awesome like that.
Yeah.
So it's these innate abilities.
Yeah, and
Aaron, we hope you're listening because we're just fucking with you, dude.
He's a fun guy.
He is.
He's going to come back. And so is this guy. But no, I mean, do you think that the military and working
You're welcome.
with a crew and learning how and learning some skills about yourself, does that kind of facilitate confidence in your own ability? Like, do you think you would have had the strength and resolve to be like, you know what, I know computers, let's do this, without that confidence that the American military gave you?
that's a good question, of course, because I don't really have any.
That's the only kind of questions I have.
Yeah, there's really no way to. I don't think I can imagine a circumstance where picking up the computer stuff after I got out of the military wasn't impacted by it, because I can't remove that information.
I got you.
Dominoes.
Yeah.
It's dominoes.
Whether it would have been something I could have picked up or not, I think that from an intellectual standpoint, I think I could have.
Okay, good.
It would have been something I would have been able to.
An alternate timeline.
Sure.
You would have got there.
Right. The military experience, the experience from that had a little more impact on maybe understanding how far I could push it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Not as much whether or not I could do it.
Your
So
capabilities.
there was certainly some impact that it had on, having some self-confidence based on
Exactly. Okay.
that would have said, yeah, well, I can pick this up. On the one hand, without that experience, maybe I say to myself, oh, okay, I can do this. But on the other hand, with that experience now, I'm saying, oh, I can do this.
And then did that confidence also translate over to, like, you know what? I can operate a tank with 3 other guys. I can handle some computers. You know what? I'm going to do EMS. Because that takes a little bit of testicular fortitude.
Yeah, so the EMS thing, I had been doing work from, I did those, work as a computer tech, and then ended up, when I was at IBM, I had been, because partly as a result of the ADHD, I wasn't doing a very good job of keeping track of my time, of my hours, and so on at least one timesheet I was guessing. And they looked it up, they did a comparison, and they terminated my contract there because I had not done a very good job of keeping track of my hours.
Right.
So, rightfully so, they sent me off on a path to do something else.
Right.
And as a consequence of that, I wound up having a friend of mine that was interested in doing her CNA, and I was helping her to study for it. And I had remembered all of my parents had bought me a copy of Grey's Anatomy when I was 10. And
Wow.
That's where you start. That's where you start.
Wow. There it is.
And I remembered all my anatomy. I remembered a lot of these. And so when we were studying for it, she, at some point, sort of almost nonchalantly pointed out, hey, you're really good at this stuff. And that started that gear of, you know what, this is something I have a pretty good grasp on.
Well, and
It's just a
actually,
gear.
And in the back of your head is that original idea of being a doctor.
Yes,
So,
And it's
absolutely.
something you actually gave a damn about, too. It's something that you would bother to keep track of.
Yes.
That's how much you cared about it.
Yeah. And so I decided, after talking to her about that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to look into it. How do I make this next stage? How do I use this? And so I wound up applying for the EMS program at Pima. I got accepted, but I didn't have the money to make the first semester that I wanted to, so I had to try to make some money to get to that. But while that was going on, Southwest Ambulance put an ad in the paper and said, hey, if you want to be an EMT, we're doing an academy. Apply here. So
Like an
I did.
accelerated course.
Yeah, theirs was actually a full time. It was a 40-hour week,
Oh shit.
5-week
Yeah.
EMT course. You know, we went to.
And you got paid doing it.
It got paid at a reduced rate, but yeah, it was basically a probationary rate. So yeah, so I did that. I was like, hey, I can do that. And I applied for it, and I did. You know, got the interview. Yeah, did a good job in the interview, and they accepted me in as an EMT student. Took the EMT Academy there at Southwest, and then 5 weeks after that, they started throwing us out in the field, which was where, going all the way back to your original with Margaret, Alec, I had worked a shift, front half shift. Like the first 2 weeks I was at Southwest as an EMT, I had driven the ambulance maybe 15 times total.
Right.
And suddenly I'm at a Northwest Fire Station as an EMT, you know, with Margaret, Alec.
And those first 15 times, you ever go code 3?
You have to do at least a couple.
Yeah, of course.
That's a requirement. Sure.
Okay, cool.
So I did one front half shift with her on Northwest, and then didn't really interact with her much, you know. But then worked as an EMT for a couple of years. Went out and got my medic. Did the accelerated medic course there as well, which was a full time. They don't do those anymore, but it was 5 days a week,
And at
8
some
hours
point,
a day.
that's so right around when you and I crossed paths.
Yeah, it was when I was
'Cause-
at the academy, at the EMT academy.
Right. 'Cause now I'm trying to remember. Have I been a medic longer, or have you been a medic longer?
You have.
Okay.
You were a medic already.
I was a
when
medic already when
EMT,
you,
yeah.
but see, I did it because I was never an EMT. I think you know this, and I've probably said it before in the program. So this was a second career for me, and I spent a lot of time doing, you know, various things, private investigations, and like trying to figure out. What the
You
fuck
were a
I was.
PI?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
It's boring. It's boring. Trust me. We'll talk about it someday. We'll get a real PI on here. Heck, I got another idea for a guest.
Okay, good.
But
Good.
yeah, well, it's actually boring. But yeah, so I had done a lot of different things, and I was like, I've got to figure out what the fuck I'm gonna do here. So I was gonna be a nurse because that's what my mom is, and I, you know, asked her about it, and we kind of went through the deal, and then she was like, well, be a PCT first and see, you know, what nurses do. You can work with them, and you'll see what they do. And I worked with nurses for 2 weeks, and I was like, fuck that. You know, I'm not going to be a nurse. Well, because it's
Why not?
actually, well, it's in reverence to them because they have a very hard job.
Their job is not easy.
No, it's not. It's not easy. And on top of that, what I saw was everyone was shitting on them. So patients hated them, doctors hated them, other nurses hated them, medics definitely hated them. You know, and it was just like they're doing all this stuff for you. They're caring for you, and all they get back is shit. So, you know, they did two things for me. One, it made sure that I was more compassionate to nurses, but it also made sure that I didn't become one. Right. So,
Yeah.
you know, I've got this PCT training, and I still am trying to find a place. And you know, one of my coworkers is like, I'm going to be a paramedic. And you think paramedic, you think, you know, you're going to be on a truck, and it's Johnny and Roy, you know, and you know, it's third watch with Doc, you know, and you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to drive a Corvette. You're going to have a very hot girlfriend. And
What
know,
show
so-
are you guys watching?
Oh wait, sorry.
No, I know.
He knows he's not that young, but.
I'm an
Anyway,
old soul.
and so I decided, yeah, I could probably do that, and I realized that you had to be, you know, I did the research, and you have to become an EMT before you become a paramedic, but you only need the certification.
Correct.
You don't actually need to work as
You don't need your shoe leather.
And I
on
was
the
like,
floor.
dude, I am old. I am not going to. If I can go from EMT on paper to medic in reality, then I'm going to do it, and that's what I did. And I think that's when we met. Like,
Yes.
'cause I got out of medic course, and I got out of medic class, and of course, you know, short man syndrome. I was walking around like I owned Southwest Ambulance, which I didn't, but you know.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you
at the
know-
time that would have been the quartersman. Yeah.
Right. No, actually, I think I came.
Was it after?
Maybe it was about the same time. Like they were on the
Yeah.
way out. I can't really remember.
How long ago was this for our listeners that don't know you both personally?
I started at the ENT Academy in July of 2006.
Oh, okay.
Right, and I graduated as a medic in January of 2006.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Right on. Well, that was a little bit of time ago, I guess. What year is this? 2019?
2019.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I know, right? 13 years ago.
That's
Oh my
a
goodness.
stone cold bummer, man. And how long how long did you stay within that circle?
He rode with
circle?
me. He rode with me once and he quit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, he scared me off EMS.
That's why people are shocked. I'm like episode 16. They're like, "Is this the same Adrian?"
Like, no, really? You put up with this asshole? For
And
16
likewise
weeks?
for people who know me about him. But no, seriously, are you still actively employed by what were the AMR or?
No, I am not. I worked as a EMT basically until 2008, 06 to 08, and then when I got my medic, and I worked as a medic for Southwest 08 to full time until I think it was January of 2012.
Okay. So you
it
were
was
hoping
that.
for the Mayan calendar.
It was the end of 2012.
You were going for the Mayan calendar thing. You're like, listen, 2012's happening.
And yeah, so and then I went
Okay.
part time with them for a while because I had started my own CPR training company, and I was going to try to
brilliant.
devote some more time to that. That didn't work out, but as a consequence of that, I actually started working with CPRU guys here in town and started teaching for them. And that was going pretty well.
Yeah,
so
plug out
I
the
went
CPR to you.
Southwest.
Thanks, guys. Great training.
Yeah,
Everybody should have
they've
that
got some
either way.
outstanding instructors, and they do a really very good job.
And if you have the
I
opportunity
don't
to
work
go
there anymore,
to,
so it's not.
if you have the opportunity, because a lot of people need to get a CPR cert for their jobs, go to the EMT or the actual medic CPR class because they'll teach you a couple more things than just pulmonation and keeping people's.
Yeah, well, they call it the healthcare provider level.
Yeah, healthcare provider CPR. If you have the opportunity, go take the class. It's a little bit longer, but it's a little bit more inclusive, and it teaches a little bit about more about what's actually happening when somebody does go through
Death?
Cardiac arrest.
circling the
Respiratory
drain. Thank
We
you.
call it death.
I'm the musician / producer here. You guys are the medics. I'm
And we
surprised.
call it death.
I'm surprised I can keep up with anybody here.
It's like that guy's dead, but can we fix that?
So.
Right.
A couple
Trying to figure out
questions.
why he's dead, and do I have the tools to take why he's dead away from him?
Exactly.
Two-part question. Are you a doctor now? And B,
No.
why not? It
Money.
sounds exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we had a doctor, Dr. Larry DeLuca.
Yeah, that guy too.
He was on a little bit.
We're so mean to our guests after they've been on.
That's why they love
It's
us.
horrible.
They love our reviews.
No, we love Larry DeLuca. In fact, we love Larry DeLuca so much that Green was like, "Hey, should we have?"
I was trying to have both
Wait,
Dr.
should we-
DeLuca on at the same time
And I'm
as
just
Mr.
like,
Warren.
he's a fucking doctor. We don't
Hey,
have him on call. at
I'm
will.
like, listen, he's an ER doc.
We got lucky.
I'll sever. I got plenty of scars. I'll sever a main vein over here somewhere. I'd be like, listen, guy, I don't have insurance. I need you to come and stitch me up on the cheap.
Would not do.
That's okay, but so. God, you derail me so well, and I used to do this on air, like for Journal Broadcast Network.
Which is why I derail you.
I know, and like I'd be fired 4 times over if I stammered this much. Which is why we bring it to you, our lovely listeners of School of Hard Thoughts podcast. We're here with Donovan Warren, and I have a book in front of me, and it's not like a pamphlet. This is how many pages? Is that, first of all, when you write a book, you're like, I want to get to page 234. Like, that I want to write 234 pages.
No.
And
I
what
write the
took you
story until the story is done?
What took you from working with Adrian and EMS to writing this book? And let me
And another.
And he's written a couple books. Terry, our producer, is going to bring that up on our. No, we don't have a Terry. Oh, we don't have a producer. I'm losing my mind. Okay, I just got that in my.
That's the hallucinatory effects of
Randomly
excessive
pick the name
caffeine
Terry.
ingestion.
Yeah, sure. Caffeine. We'll go with that. But I'm holding a book here in my hand. It's called Universus Respondent.
Respondent.
Yeah. Respondent. Sorry.
okay.
Like Wilmot and Wilmont.
Right.
Everybody says Wilmont. There's no N.
There's no other word.
Ah,
I think more people type it than say it.
Yeah.
They say Wilmot, but they'll type Wilmont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Google it. It doesn't exist. But then the subtitle is Fermi's Paradox Answered. And for those of you that know anything about sci-fi or space, Fermi's Paradox pretty much is the theory that we're alone because we deserve it. There's nobody out there. It's been too long. If they were out there, we would have seen them by now. Even given the vast distance and time in the cosmos, there would have been some sort of archaic thing around that, a monolith, a statue,
Right.
Something, anything. There would have been something out there. So we've been having a great conversation with you, and I just want to know what led you into. And you know, while you guys were talking about the military and medical stuff, I was kind of doing some quick speed reading on a couple things, reading a paragraph here or there, and you're not a bad sci-fi author.
Thank you.
I've read plenty, and as you can see, my curios. I'm a big sci-fi fan myself. And so I'm kind of in love with you right now, to be quite honest. How did that happen? What made you say, like, listen, I'm going to hunker down and write a book? And how many books have you written?
I have written so far 2 books,
Okay.
and I have also published a chapbook of poetry. The poetry book came first.
Like Def Jam?
You know, I don't know that reference. I apologize.
Okay, well. Yes! I'm going to send you a link.
Def Jam Records, I know Def Jam Records.
There's Def Jam poetry, too.
Oh.
And it's horrible.
Oh, is it like a beat? Is it like a beat thing?
I don't know him.
Spoken word?
I'm gonna look directly in the camera. I don't know this guy.
Yeah,
Please
not familiar with
don't
Def Jam
come
poetry,
after
sorry.
me.
No, this is what happens when you let the personality come into the microphone here. But no, seriously, it does seem like you have some pros and that you've actually done a fair bit of research, and that research must have been just recreation.
So the first thing I did was I had started a blog series that covered my Desert Saber, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Desert Saber, which was the ground war, official ground war title of the Persian Gulf War, right? And as I was writing those together, I kind of got this thing. I was like, you know what this looks like? I could do this as a book. I could just do a memoir book, and it's actually not very long. I think the printed version of it is like 80 pages. It's not very long.
A novella.
But it is in full color, which is why it's as expensive as it is on Amazon. Because I have full color images on there of myself and platoon mates in Saudi and tanks driving through the desert. So
Very
anyway,
cool.
I wrote that, and after I had written that, I was getting ready to get it published. But while I was working on it, I was still working as a paramedic.
Okay.
And so I was working my 3-4 schedule, which is 3 24-hour shifts in a 5-day period, so 24 on, off, and then 4 days off, right? So you do 3 days on.
So you had some downtime.
Yeah, and it was during the uptime. It was actually while I was on shift. I was talking with my EMT partner about a couple of different ideas. One of which was the Fermi's Paradox. We started just having this kind of casual conversation.
Just, I got to jump in just because
Sure.
Is this somebody I know?
Yeah, actually, it was Thomas Andrews.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well,
Get him on the podcast, Adrian. Come on.
Stop it.
Yeah, so we were talking about this a little bit, talking about Fermi's Paradox, but also the Big Bang Theory was on. And sometimes, if we were in station, we'd watch it. We'd watch it on a TV at the station.
The Big Bang Theory is a program on network TV.
Oh, stop it. Everybody knows what the fuck it is.
Okay.
And so they were having one of the episodes came on. Sheldon was lamenting missing the singularity, the AI singularity. And I was like, what? What is this? And Thomas and I started talking about it a little bit, and then I went back home the next time I was, came off shift and started looking some stuff up, and discovered this concept of the AI singularity being the point where AI finally learns enough and is capable of outpacing human learning.
Just to throw this out there, I think that we've already hit that and we passed it.
I think we can prove that we haven't, because if you were to go to some of the most advanced of the AI stuff, for example, read some of the book AI creates, and it's nonsense.
Right. Yeah. It's still.
It's
I think it was Google. Remember the
incomprehensible.
Google AI that they had to shut down
Because they started
it was
forming
racist.
that.
Started going into a racist rant.
Just like this
Yeah.
Hitler type racist. shit
No,
that was
but
going on.
I think we're on the edge.
the Google AI also had to shut down a program because they had two AI programs communicating to each other orally, A-U-R,
Yeah,
orally.
yeah.
And they kind of came up with their own language. And it sounded, and they were using words in the English lexicon. But it wasn't making any sense. They would say
You
like...
mean Federation Standard?
The Queen's English, please. I'm a Beatles and Doctor Who fan. Get your goddamn... anyways, but no, they were saying the word like you like 5 or 15 times, and then the word with like another 20 times. But they kind of turned that into a form of communication with each other, and it started just becoming batshit crazy, and all the engineers started getting very afraid, and they shut it down.
Well, it does seem as if they weren't communicating with each other, and they weren't sure what was going on, which was why that's.
But that's to me even bigger cue into that there's actual, for whatever volition, for whatever depth you want to put on the term life, there is life behind that, because they were kind of sussing each other out, like how SETI might do to a signal from a fast radio burst or something like that. They were kind of testing the waters.
They were testing the waters, and I think unfortunately for the idea that they've passed that singularity point, while they tested the waters, all they did was test. They didn't make any additional jump or advancement that allowed them to
in that
move past
specific observed instance.
And that's the only instance that we have any evidence of.
That we've observed. Which obviously things we haven't observed, what the hell do we care?
Right,
You know?
right.
But
So,
hey, unless you're working with quantum,
Right.
okay? I love this podcast. This is my favorite one so far.
He says that every week.
Oh,
Sorry.
and he's right every week.
It just gets better every week.
Okay, so you're having this conversation and you go home and you do what?
I just start kind of exploring an idea of, and the sort of the main genesis of this novel, and I want to make sure that it's clear that this is not Fermi's Paradox answered, and it's science fiction. Okay, it's a novel, not.
Oh, wait, you didn't answer the paradox?
Actually answer the paradox.
Oh.
Okay, that was why I actually put a novel on there, was so people didn't see it on the shelf in the bookstore and think to themselves, "Hey, oh my goodness, this guy's just a PhD, physicist, and he figured it out." No.
Have you seen Our Country?
Right.
You could totally make some money, man.
But what happened was I kind of started to get this idea of why haven't we? Because Fermi, the famous question is, where is everybody?
Exactly.
And one of the reasons that is often postulated as to why we haven't heard from aliens, if there are any out there, and the map would seem to suggest that there is at least a probability that there is life and intelligent life and potentially spacefaring intelligent life that exists in this galaxy, let alone other galaxies.
Even within earshot of our relative, solar system.
Sure. And with that, why haven't we heard from them? One possible answer to that is because there's only a very narrow window of time during which any potentially spacefaring communication will communicate in broadband method, using 360-degree radio frequency transmissions and other detectable, especially RF. So how do they communicate with each other? You can use lasers. They're a very pinpoint way to get information from point A to point B. And if you're not directly in the line of sight, you cannot intercept that communication.
Right.
Fiber optics.
It's a bullet.
Yeah.
My answer has always been I think that we have the physics right, so you can't go faster than light, and the distances are just too great.
That is certainly one answer. That is certainly one possibility.
Then
This
you
book
need to
assumes
raise.
that the reason that we can't is because this broadband communication method only lasts for a short period of time for any potentially spacefaring civilization in their time frame. And if we don't catch them during that time frame, they move on to a much more point-to-point communication method. Now, I don't want to tell you what point-to-point communication method happens,
Right.
but they don't.
Spoilers.
There is no faster than light travel happening in this. I tried very, very hard to make it a hard science fiction book.
So you didn't do any FTL, no quantum entanglements, nothing.
Quantum entanglement may play a role, but quantum entanglement has been proven to be true.
Exactly. Exactly, because if you can have a proton or a neutron be almost in two places simultaneously, it doesn't matter whether that space is the space of this pen or 13 billion light years.
Right.
It's all relative.
Yeah. So for any of our listeners that aren't familiar with this idea of quantum entanglement, you basically any of these particles, photons, neutrons, electrons,
Bosons.
protons, bosons, they all have a spin.
Mm-hmm.
And which spin they have is random. And so if you create, back up one step. So they're random, and until you observe it, it is only a probability that it is in one or another state.
Right.
And that goes back to the cat in the box, right?
Schrodinger.
Yeah. So Schrodinger's cat, the whole interpretation of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics goes back to this idea that until you observe, number one, you can only tell how fast it's going or where it is.
Right.
But you can't do either until you observe it. And once you observe it, you fix that information.
But then the act of observation can skew raw data
Sure.
when it comes when you're talking in these kinds of realms, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Just awesome.
So one of the things that you can do is that you can create, for example, photons. And a photon is going to have a polarization, and it's going to have a random polarization depending on how it's created, where it's created. And if you create them in such a way, if you create two of them that are mated together in such a way that you don't measure what their actual polarization spin is, and then you separate them by a distance that is farther than they could possibly have communicated at the speed of light, farther apart than they could possibly have communicated with each other. If you observe one, then both of them immediately fix.
You're also observing the other, regardless of the distance in time and or space.
And it happens instantaneously. So you observe that this one over here has a 0-degree polarization spin, then the other one will have a 90-degree polarization spin, and it instantaneously obtains that spin.
It's been a long time since I've read a book cover to cover in a day, but Universus Respondit. How do you say your first name again?
Basil.
Basil. I love people who go by their middle names, first of all. Basil Donovan Warren, Universe Respondent. I'm going to read this. I'm going to keep this, by the way. You're not getting this book back.
Oh, it's Ace's gift, so you two can fight it out.
No, just go ahead and sign it and I'll let him borrow it.
He's reading a bunch of law books right now.
Right, exactly.
He's going to be my
I have to be
attorney,
fair.
which I'm going to definitely need
law
here.
school's beating the shit out of me right now. So.
And I got a pocket full of money. I'll just split up between the two of you for this. It sounds like you have done more than just recreational. I mean, it's recreational research in the vein that you don't currently have a PhD in astrophysics or cosmology.
I don't even have a master's degree in anything, so
That's okay. You know, isn't Michael Crichton like a rogue scholar?
Well, first of all,
he's a physician, isn't he?
Well, he was, but he was. Isn't he fucking dead?
Let's start with the most salient fact is that he's dead. So we might want to talk about it in the past tense.
Posthumously.
Wasn't.
There you go. No.
I thought he was a physician.
I've been so busy trying
He was a doctor.
He was
Oh,
a
yeah.
doctor.
He was a doctor.
But
ER.
you know, that's the only place where he really spent his academia. You know, he
Yeah.
matriculated in that, but the rest of his stuff, you know, your Andromeda Strain, your Jurassic
great
Park.
Jurassic Park, yeah.
Great book.
Andromeda Strain is what actually got me
Yeah,
into
me
being
too.
a
Yeah.
sci-fi
Right.
nerd.
And I
Was
read that
Andromeda
young.
Strain.
I
Same
read
here.
that
I
young.
think I was like 12 or 13 when I read Andromeda Strain for a book report. And you know, everybody else is like the Phantom Toll Booth and you know some bullshit from Steinbeck.
Just
I'll
as
read
long
about
as
it.
you weren't reading Hemingway.
Yeah.
That will fucking scar you. Hemingway scars you. It's just
Yeah, he had some good
was
ideas.
He was evil.
He
I
had a
love
hot
him, but he
daughter.
was evil.
And he liked cats and drinking, so I'm okay with him. But
He did indeed enjoy imbibing.
Yeah.
well, and Hemingway is actually one of the great. Okay, we're gonna switch rails here. Thank you, School Heart Thoughts. When the big ass hurricane hit the Eastern Shoreboard, I think it was in 1923, 22. He was one of the first people on his boats to go out just on his own and go look for survivors, and he was picking up people and pets. And he was just ferrying them back to the mainland from these like outer rim islands, just on his own. He was just like, "Holy crap, everything's all screwed up. I wonder if there's anybody out there." So he just got like 14 bottles of rum, fueled up his boat, and rescued like I think about like 2 or 3 dozen people after that hurricane. So
So you're telling me this because he was such a good human being that he, in his writing, had to be an evil son of a bitch.
yeah, exactly. Like Walt Whitman.
Exploring an alternate
Can you tell I'm
personality.
scarred by reading some of his
He's
books?
like a heterosexual. He's like a heterosexual Walt Whitman. So, all I'm saying is that, given the conversation we had just in the last 8-ish minutes, you do more than just watch The Orville and Doctor Who and Star Trek. It seems like you've actually read some nonfiction when it comes to science.
Oh, geez, yeah. I mean, there was a book, of course, Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time.
Oh, yes.
That was one of the first, well, actually not one of the first, but it was one of the most memorable books that I had read. There was another book, and I cannot for the life of me, I may look it up here in a second, but it was a book it was all about quantum mechanics. And it really was sort of a middling level. You didn't need to have, you know, bachelor in, BS in science and, physics in order to understand it. But it was not for kids. It was an adult book, assumed some science knowledge, but it really went into. I am
Some advanced
driving me
thinking.
nuts now, so I'm gonna have to look this up.
I dig it. You go ahead and do that, and we're going to go ahead and, while Mr. Donovan is doing that, he's written a couple books. Universus, Respondent, and I will personally do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you do enough. I'm putting him through school to be my lawyer, because God knows I'm going to need it.
And you are actually if you're paying taxes.
Excellent, which I do from time to time. But Mr. Warren has written a couple books. It looks like his first one was about his experiences in the Gulf War. It's called With It or In It, Desert Shield and Desert Storm from the Loader's Hat. So if you're a historian, if you have any kind of inkling into wondering what brought our nation to where it is today and why we have some of the great things we do, he is one of those people that went over there and, like he said earlier, probably one of the most successful military campaigns in modern history. And he was part of that. And it's called With It or In It. Check out that book. We're going to post links to that on our Facebook page, School of Hard Thoughts Facebook page. And then he got bored with that and started talking about Fermi's Paradox. Universus Respondent. Can't wait to read this one. Okay, so did you find it? Did I drag that out long enough?
Yes.
See, that's
Awesome.
my Journal Broadcast Network stuff coming in handy there, Ace.
Yeah, it's actually a book called In Search of Schrodinger's Cat.
Okay.
And it's it discusses all of these basic sort of ideas.
Yeah.
Sorry, by John Grimmett. Thank you.
John Grimmett.
And he, anyway, so the book is about this. It explains all of this quantum superposition and quantum entanglement stuff. It also talks about the directionality of time and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so those are the two two main books that I had read, and that one in particular was a really sort of an enlightening read on quantum mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Really helped to kind of learn me some of these concepts.
Well, because it is real science, and I think to a casual observer, it seems it isn't, and even to non-casual observers, none of us really know what the hell quantum stuff is, and that's kind of the point.
Right.
That's kind of the point. But it is intimidating. But there are chunks that are digestible that if you have to do that with many venues of science, because especially when you're talking big picture stuff, once you're talking about planetary systems and hundreds and thousands and billions of light years. I have a lot to talk to you about once we end this podcast because everybody else would just be completely bored. But this has been a really fun time. I've enjoyed listening to your story.
Thank you. I'm glad. This has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap it up. But again, thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
Thank you
for your service to our country as well.
Thank you for and that includes your service, which I've always been vocal about your service as a EMT and a paramedic, civilian stateside. That I think that's just as important. And we're coming to you as always from Famous Sam's, the Golf Links and Colt in Tucson, Arizona, 7129 East Golf Links Road, the best place to watch sports. The Super Bowl coming tomorrow. Go Rams.
Yes.
Oh!
Yes, go Rams.
Hang on.
This is the only time a Cowboys fan or a Steelers fan can
Exactly.
agree on.
Okay, so this is our sports segment. We're news. We end with sports. We didn't do any weather because we live in Tucson. It's fucking beautiful out.
It's amazing.
The rest of y'all can go suck rocks. Suck rock salt. I'm in literally in cutoff shorts today and a t-shirt. But yes, we have the Super Bowl coming up. What are your guys' picks? Who do you guys want?
Oh, Rams.
Rams.
Yeah, I want the Rams, but it's going to come down to two coaches: Sean McVay, the young upstart, new kind of mind of new thinking with play calling and strategy, versus probably the best to ever do it, Bill Belichick. And that's
Did
what
you know
scares
he passed
me.
the bar? He's bar certified.
Oh fuck him. Anyway.
I'm just saying. Guy knows loopholes.
So yeah,
And
okay,
unfortunately, he's a guy that eats young coaches.
yeah, he
alive.
does.
Oh
He
yeah,
does.
he's a
and
chess
that's-
player.
Yeah.
We were discussing it at work yesterday, and that's the thing that scares me is it is going to come down to the coaches. Although it could come down to one big play or one turnover or something like that. I think it's going to be a close game. I think they ran like 1,100 simulations, and like
Lord.
everyone was a close game.
It's like the supercomputer at Clemson is being taken over by.
Yep.
Well, Vegas, they've got to figure it out.
That's
And
true.
they've got the
That's
money to
true.
afford it. They're
Right.
supercomputer simulation sets.
Yeah,
That's
so
true. Okay, my bad.
and we
Forgot where I was.
want to shout out to Aaron Hayworth because we fucked with you a lot.
Oh yes.
And-
However, it is. I can tell you from experience being inside of a tank that living in a submarine cannot possibly be any. That's like the most difficult thing I can imagine as a human being is to live inside of essentially something that is about the
Right,
size
because
of
in the
5
tank you
tanks.
knew you could get out.
In a tank, and in fact I did. Yeah, if you have to go number 2, you get off the tank and you go number 2, and then you get back on the tank. Yeah.
You can't just hang it out the side on a submarine.
No, you can't.
Well, and that makes sense
Depends on who you
'cause-
are. Yeah.
Oh, a lot of fun.
But we do really need to get you guys in here together so that we can tar and feather him over his disgusting view on the hunt for Red October.
And before we do that, we're going to start a Kickstarter fund for a 4-channel mixer from Behringer. This podcast brought to you by a 2-channel Behringer mixer. If we're going to get 4 people in here, listen.